In the meantime, though, we want to talk about more on the impact of the coronavirus on business around the world. I want to welcome McKinsey's global managing partner, Kevin Sneader, here. His home base, I should say, is Hong Kong, and much of your time is on the road, meeting with clients around the world, all sorts of major CEOs, but you live on an airplane. So I'm curious what this experience, even over the last 2 weeks, has been for you.
Well, the reality is there's a very personal experience and then what I'm hearing from our clients.
Right.
You know, on a personal level, my experience in a way is trivial compared to the hardship and the experience of those in Hubei province or in Wuhan. But living in Hong Kong, my daughter has been off school for quite some time. She goes back on March the 2nd, theoretically, but there's lots of speculation this morning that that could change. And of course, therein lies the challenge. This is a situation which is rapidly taking on a life of its own in terms of how people are reacting to it.
Right.
Queues of 10,000 people for masks in Kowloon. Very difficult situation.
What's it like in Hong Kong? So, for example, your daughter, your family, without school, with some people not going to work, with some people, I mean, what's a day in the life?
Civil unrest at the same time.
Well,
Civil unrest at the same time.
It's not exactly a straightforward situation. And my daughter, on the one hand, is going to school in the sense of virtually going to school. What the schools are doing, many of them, is conducting online classes. Right. It's a massive experiment in working from home. That's what we've got in terms of our people. And so I think you've got this situation now where people are making best of a very tough reality.
Right. What though, in terms of, are people not going shopping? Are people not going out on the streets?
Well, you can certainly see retail's been very hard hit.
No, but in terms of just the very personal experience of your own
quiet.
family.
It's a ghost town in that sense. People are off the streets.
Are the escalators packed in the mid-levels?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
You need to go to the supermarket to get food, can you get things delivered?
You can. But increasingly, people are focused on contactless delivery. In fact, that's one of the things that in Wuhan they've been working on, which is how do you deliver food without any contact? Now, this is a country that has got quite a sophisticated ability to work online, and so you're seeing that take off. So it's changing life in that sense, and it's become very different from the life we all had.
And then in terms of the business itself, for McKinsey, but also for your clients, what are you telling them? What's the impact been?
It's very different by sector and by geography. And I think it's important to remember that. I was in Paris on Monday. And in Paris, one of the most notable things was in the week after Chinese New Year, there were no Chinese tourists. And so the stores were deserted.
Wow.
Right. That's a major impact overseas. But that's the retail sector. The hotels, similarly, I was chatting to a hotel manager who told me their occupancy rates were significantly off what they would normally experience.
So let me ask you a question. Today we have the market. I mean, right now you look at where the futures are, and it's almost as if the coronavirus didn't happen. I mean, in terms of where the market, how the market's treating this. Given what you know about the material impact this may or may not have on multinational companies, does this make sense to you?
Well, what makes sense to me is having a very different view of what will impact different sectors. If you are a sector in the retail and hospitality and you're playing there, then clearly the sheer number of Chinese tourists has an impact. Let me give you one statistic. People keep drawing comparison with SARS. This is very different. There were 7 million Chinese tourists who went further than Hong Kong in 2002, 2003. There are 150 million now. So clearly that sector has a much different perspective than the financial markets, where, frankly, the questions I tend to get is math around how big do you think this will be, how long will it last, because we're trying to put it in our models. Wholly different reaction.
I want to pivot the conversation for a moment because you have an op-ed out today, and the headline of this op-ed is, "The McKinsey I hope the world gets to know." You are here, by the way, I should mention, a year after we had a somewhat contentious conversation.
We did, but Joe's not here today.
On this set. About the reputation of McKinsey, about some of the work and clients that you had taken on that clearly had caused some controversy. There were ethical questions, moral questions. Tell us what's happened since then.
Well, lots happened since then. When I was here, Andrew, I think I said to you very clearly we were going to listen, we were going to learn, and we're going to act. And the reason I wrote the op-ed was to try and communicate we've done all three. And there's always more we can do. But what we have done is we've thought very hard, and more than thought, we've developed a series of policies and approaches that really do help us govern how we serve the clients.
Okay, so what clients were on your client list a year ago when we were sitting together that are not on your client list now?
Well, one of the things I said to you was we were going to have a hard look, particularly geographies which score poorly on democracy indices, because it is different there. And so what we've decided is we're not going to work in the defence sector, the intelligence sector, the police sector, in those countries. And I think that is actually quite a significant step. It certainly goes further than what you see governments and others do.
Did that require dropping clients?
Of course, it requires stopping work and not doing things that we were doing in the past. Otherwise, what's the point?
The reason I ask is this wasn't prospective work that you were turning down. These were actual clients who had been long-standing clients that you had to call and say,
we've taken a view.
Thank you so much, but
we've taken a view in several sectors that we're just not going to do this kind of work anymore. And I think that's in part because we recognise that the world in which we operate has changed and how people make decisions and judge us has changed too.
Give us a couple of examples.
Well, I think one of the things we've thought long and hard about is in countries which lack democratic governance.
Right.
You just have to take a different stance.
For example?
So, for example, much of the Middle East.
Okay.
China. Much of the world is not democratic. So we can't, and I don't think we should exit from every sector, but we can be very thoughtful about where we choose to
But what does that mean? Which sectors won't you play in relative to China? Which sectors won't you play in relative to the Middle East? Which countries in the Middle East won't you touch? Which countries will you touch?
Well, there's about 100 countries that score less than 6 in the Economist Intelligence Unit Index. Those are the countries we're talking about. And in those geographies, we will not work in the sectors I just described. Frankly, there are also countries where we don't have an office. And if you don't have an office, you don't have the same understanding of how the place works. In those countries, we'll also step back from working in a way that we just don't feel we can.
Were you frustrated after you've been working on rehabilitating the reputation of the company, and then Mayor Pete Buttigieg gets, I don't know, for lack of a better phrase, in trouble, criticized by certain sectors of the Democratic Party for having worked at McKinsey, albeit briefly? What did you think about that? And
my frustration is that the McKinsey I know, which was the point of the article, is one that is very different, I believe, than the one that's characterised in the media. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about a very small number of clients. We really are. Because one of the things that's happened since we last spoke is we've gone and served 1,500 clients around the world. And I think we've done that with a very hard focus on helping those clients improve their performance and make a difference to the communities in which they operate. So I'm very frustrated that that gets lost in the noise.
Okay.